On March 18th, 1937, New London, Texas was an ordinary American town living through extraordinary economic growth. Oil had turned East Texas into one of the most productive energy regions in the nation, and New London benefited greatly from that boom. The school district was one of the wealthiest in Texas, attracting families who believed their children were receiving a safe, modern education. The New London Consolidated School symbolized that confidence. It was large, well equipped, and filled with nearly 700 students and teachers. To parents, it looked solid, dependable, and built to last. But on that afternoon, beneath the classrooms and hallways, an invisible danger had been growing. At 3:17, without warning, the school exploded. In less than 10 seconds, hundreds of lives were lost. What followed was one of the deadliest school disasters in United States history, and one that would permanently change public safety laws across the nation. This is the story of what happened in New London, how people reacted from it, and the reform that emerged from the catastrophe. To understand how the explosion happened, it is important to understand the environment in which the school existed. New London sat in the middle of East Texas oil field, one of the largest oil discoveries in American history. Oil production brought jobs, money, and rapid development. However, it also created dangerous byproducts, especially natural gas. Oil drilling produced large amount of excess gas, also known as casing head gas, which was often burned off as waste. This gas was extremely flammable and had no natural odor. Because it was considered a byproduct, it was loosely regulated and frequently mishandled. Some businesses and institutions illegally tapped into this gas to save money. Despite being a wealthy district, the New London School Board made the decision to connect the school to this waste gas. Their goal was simple: reduce fuel costs. There was no gas detectors, no warning systems, no required inspections. And because the gas was odorless, no one inside the school could detect the leak. Over time, gas slowly accumulated beneath the building in an enclosed crawl space. Each day, the danger increased, but remained completely invisible. March 18th, 1937, the day of the explosion, began like any other school day. Students attended classes, completed assignments, and looked forward to going home. Teachers prepared lessons, unaware that gas levels beneath the building had reached a critical point. In the school's shop class, students were working on woodworking projects. Shortly before dismissal, a teacher turned on an electric sander. That single spark produced from the sander was enough. The accumulated gas ignited instantly. The school explosion was lifted off of its foundation and got slammed back down. Walls collapsed inward. The roof shattered classrooms. Furniture, bricks, and steel were thrown hundreds of feet up in the air. Some students were killed instantly. Others trapped beneath the debris, injured and calling for help. Parents working nearby oil fields felt the ground shake and saw a cloud of smoke rise above the town. Many ran toward the school, already fearing the worst. Rescue efforts began immediately. Teachers, students, oil workers, and volunteers dug through the rubble with their bare hands. Fires burned throughout the wreckage, making rescue even more difficult and dangerous. Cries for help could be heard throughout the entire night. Hospitals quickly became overwhelmed. The town ran out of medical supplies. Bodies were laid out in makeshift morgues just for identification. By the end of the disaster, at least 295 people were dead, most of them children and students of the school. Some families lost 2 or 3 children in a single afternoon. As you can imagine, the emotional devastation for New London was overwhelming. New London was a small town. Everyone knew everyone. Everyone knew someone who had died. Entire classrooms had been wiped out. Parents searched desperately for children who would never come home. Funerals were held across Texas. Some services buried dozens at once. Coffins were shipped from neighboring towns because local supplies were exhausted. The tragedy quickly became national news. Newspapers from across the country printed graphic images of destroyed classrooms and grieving families. Radio broadcasts struggled to convey the scale of this loss. The nation mourned, but it also questioned, how could such a disaster happen in such a wealthy school district? Why was flammable gas allowed beneath the school? Were there no safety inspections? The public demanded answers, and they demanded them now. As investigations began, the truth became clear. The explosion was entirely and completely preventable. The gas line was illegal. The gas was odorless. There were no safeguards, and there was no enforcement. While no individual was criminally convicted, public opinion was completely unforgiving. The school board's decision to save money at the expense of safety became a national symbol of negligence. This tragedy exposed a dangerous reality. Industrial progress had outplaced safety laws. People across the country began demanding stronger regulations, not just in Texas, but everywhere. The explosion sparked outrage, and outrage demanded change. Texas lawmakers responded swiftly. One question dominated discussions. How could people protect themselves from a danger they couldn't detect? The answer led to one of the most important safety reforms in American history. Texas required that all natural gas had to be odorized using something called ethyl mercaptan, a chemical with a strong sulfur smell, similar to rotten eggs. This ensured that gas leaks could be detected before they became deadly. This reform spread nationwide. In addition to all natural gas having to be odorized, public buildings were subject to new safety codes. Engineers and architects were required to be licensed. School construction became regulated, and gas use faced strict oversight. The New London school explosion changed how Americans thought about safety, responsibility, and regulation. Today, the legacy of New London lives on quietly, as something that you don't think about, but it's something that saves your life every single day. Every time someone smells gas and leaves the building, they are protected by laws created because of this tragedy. Building codes, safety inspections, and gas regulations all trace part of their history back to New London. A memorial now stands near the site of the destroyed school. It honors the students and teachers whose lives were lost, not as statistics, but as individuals. Their deaths were unnecessary, but their legacy has saved countless lives. The New London school explosion was one of the darkest moments in American educational history. It showed the cost of ignoring safety. It proved that progress without regulation is dangerous, and it demonstrated that reform often comes only after tragedy. But from unimaginable loss came lasting change. New London did not just suffer, it transformed the nation forever. And that is why this story must continue to be told.